Thank you very much. I think this is a very nice segue after what we hear about sovereignty. So, good afternoon, everyone here. Let me begin with just two numbers. Africa contributes only about 2% of the world AI training data, and Europe imports roughly about 80% of the technologies it depends on. And we've seen that in the previous presentation. Two regions, two different realities, but one common question: how do we remain open to the world while still retaining power to shape our own digital future? That is the question that brings us here today. My name is Lacina Koné, I'm the CEO of Smart Africa, and I have the privilege of leading the Smart Africa Secretariat. I want to thank publica here, this is my first time, for these invitations, and the Mercator Foundation for making this conversation possible. I will make one central argument today. Africa's digital transformations is no longer only an African agenda. It's a part of the global conversations on sovereignty, competitiveness, and the future of artificial intelligence. And in that conversations, Africa is not asking to be invited in the future. Africa is already building it. I'm going to talk about 5 things. Number 1, Smart Africa from vision to executions. Smart Africa is an alliance of 42 countries, member states, and more than 40 private sector and institutional partners anchored by an intergovernmental agreement. We call it Alliance of the Willing, and chaired by the heads of state level. Our mission is very clear, is to help build a single digital market for Africa by 2030. We are not a donor mechanism. We are not a development project. We are a continental implementation platform. We bring together heads of state, ministers, regulators, and agencies, government agency, private sector leaders, innovators as well, development partners, and civil society to solve one of Africa's most important strategic questions. How do we build a digital systems at a continental scale? Because fragmentations is one of Africa's greatest barrier. Over 50 countries in Africa, different laws, different payment systems, different data regime, different levels of infrastructure readiness. Individually, many African markets are too small to compete. But together, Africa represents one of the most important emerging digital market on our planet. This is why Africa's Continental Free Trade Area, AFCFTA, matters. It is not only about goods and services, it's also about the future of digital trade. Ladies and gentlemen, and this is why the AFCFTA Digital Trade Protocol is so important. It creates framework for cross-border data flows, digital identities, electronic payments, cybersecurity, and digital products. It is not a finished house, but it's the foundation. Let's say it. So for the first time here, Africa is putting in writing the rules of its digital economy must be shaped by Africans, aligned by the African priority, and open to trusted global partners. And at Smart Africa, our role is very simple, is to help turn that ambitions into execution. Through our continental platform, including the Africa AI Council, the African Network of Cybersecurity Authority, our Council of Ministers, our regulators, national digital agencies, and the private sector, we are building the coordination architecture Africa needs to move from visions to implementation. And that is the point I want to underline. Africa is not at the door of the digital age asking to be let in. We are actually inside the room and we are building. The second point I want to talk about is Africa's opportunity and Africa's reality. So let us be honest about the opportunity. By 2050, which is about 15 years from now, I believe, 1 in 4 people on the planet, 1 in 4 people on the planet will be an African. More than 60% of Africans today are under the age of 25. This is not a demographic footnote. It's one of the greatest concentrations of human potential the world will see this century. The question is not whether AI will shape the lives of these young Africans. Of course it will. The real question is, who will build that intelligence with those whose data and whose languages and under whose rules, as my previous speaker talked about. So now let me be equally honest about the gaps. Only around 38% of Africans are online, that was registered in 2024, and compare with the global average of around 68%. The gap between urban and rural connectivity remains wide. Reliable and affordable broadband is still out of the reach for many communities in Africa. On AI, the picture is even sharper. Africa contributes today only a small share of a global AI training data. AI training data in many African languages, of course, remain invisible in major AI systems, the frontier model, as you know. A number of countries have, of course, adopted AI strategies, but many are still at the early stages of policy development. These are the real gap, ladies and gentlemen. But I do not see them only as a deficit. I see them as largest digital infrastructure and AI opportunity of the planet, because Africa is not starting from zero. Data centers are coming online in Casablanca, Lagos, Nairobi, Kigali, Johannesburg. Africa startups also are deploying AI in agriculture, health, education, name it, climate, and financial inclusions. African researchers and innovators, including communities such as Masakan and Lilapa AI in South Africa, are doing globally important works on African languages and low resources AI. Digital payments are also expanding. Digital public infrastructure is becoming central to public services delivery. Countries are also, investing in digital identity, cybersecurity, cloud, connectivity, and AI governance. So the African story is not the story of absence. No, it is a story of unfinished constructions. And that distinction matters because the right partnership with Africa is not about filling an empty space. No, it is about joining, strengthening, and scaling an ecosystem that is already being built. My third point is Europe and Africa, two regions, one strategic challenge, and that is where Europe comes in. Europe is also asking hard questions, about technological dependence. We've seen it in previous presentations. Industrial competitiveness. We see all these big hyperscalers, cloud sovereignty, data governance, and AI autonomy. So let us be clear, Africa and Europe do not face the same magnitude of challenges, but we do face the same strategic pattern. How do we remain open without becoming dependent? How do we cooperate globally without losing actually the capacity to decide locally on our own systems? How do we build an AI system that reflects our values, our languages, our economy, and our society? So this is why actually the future of Africa-Europe digital cooperations cannot be based on the old model of donor and recipient. That model is no longer sufficient and is obsolete. What we need now is the co-investments, co-creations, technology transfer, skills development, shared governance, and market building. And in the op-eds, actually, news that I had opportunity to publish with Anna Sophia Herkens, the GIZ managing director, we use a simple image. Two small rivers that converge from a stronger current, separately each struggles against the terrain, together they move mountains. That is how I see Africa and Europe in the digital age. Europe brings industrial depth, regulatory experience, we all know, research capacity, and institutional capability and credibility. Africa brings a demographic momentum, fast-growing digital adoptions, entrepreneurial energy, and one of the world's largest future of digital market. Together, we represent one of the most important untapped AI growth corridors in the world on our planet. This is not a charity, it is a strategy. It is a strategy. The fourth point I want to talk about, what sovereignty actually means in the AI age. Let's talk about that. So let me come to the heart of the matters of the sovereignty. Digital sovereignty is often misunderstood, actually. It is not in isolation. It is not a protectionist. It is not a firewall. It is certainly not a justification for censorship or shutting down the internet. Digital sovereignty is the right of the capacity of the people to shape the digital system that increasingly shape them. It is the ability to say, this infrastructure serves our development priority, this data is governed with our consent, this algorithm can be questioned, this AI system understands our languages, our reality. This partnership builds our capacity, not dependency. This is sovereignty. And the sovereignty actually is not the opposite of openness. It is actually the foundation for meaningful openness. Because a country or a continent that has no say in the system, it depends on it. Truly choosing corporations, it is simply accepting dependency and digital apartheid. In the age of the AI, sovereignty depends on three things, ladies and gentlemen. First, infrastructure. Cables, towers, clouds, data centers, energy systems, and computing capacity are becoming the foundations of a modern economy. Ladies and gentlemen, if Africa data is generated in Africa here, but stored, processed, monetized, and governed elsewhere, then Africa will remain at the lower end of the digital value chain. We have seen this before with the raw material. We cannot repeat with the data, with the extraction economic model. This does not mean every cable and every cloud and every data center must be state-owned. No, but it does mean African country must have a meaningful control over the term on which the critical digital infrastructure is built, finance, governance, and access. The second pillar is data, identity, and trust. Digital identity is not only a technical system, it is actually a gateway to right services, finance, education, health, and economic participation. More than 850 million people, let me just go back, it's right here, yes. More than 850 million people globally still lack official proof of identity. For them, digital transformation, it is not about convenience like us. It is about visibility, dignity, inclusion. Africa must build a trusted digital public infrastructure that is actually inclusive, secure, interoperable, and right-respecting. This includes digital identity, payment, trusted data, exchange, cybersecurity, and cross-border data governance. Without trust, digital markets will not scale, and without inclusion, digital transformation will reproduce old inequality in a new form. The third part is the governance and ethic. AI systems are increasingly shaping decisions about credit, of course, education and employment, migrations, public services, and security. If these systems do not understand African languages, then African context and African reality, they will not produce a neutral outcome. They will actually produce unequal ones. Africa has more than 2,000 languages in Africa, yet most major AI systems work well only in a fraction of them. This is not only a technical gap, it is a sovereignty gap. A continent that cannot reason in its own languages cannot fully govern. The system that increasingly govern it, that is why we must invest in Africa's data set, African languages, models, African benchmark, African AI talent, African governance framework. Through the Africa AI Council at Smart Africa and its technical working group on compute, data, governance, investment market, and talent, etc., we are building a continental mechanism to help Africa shape AI, not as an afterthought, but as a co-author, not as an imitation of Europe, not in opposition to Europe, but in a dialogue with Europe and with African-owned conditions firmly in mind. Fifth and last one, what partnership must look like in this era? So, what does a real partnership look like in this new era? Let me be very concrete here. There are three things we invite European institutions and companies to do with Africa. First, co-invest in African digital infrastructure, not in the ways that create lock-in, but in a way that builds African ownership, resilience, and long-term capacity. The cables, the cloud, the data centers, and the compute infrastructure are coming. The question is not whether they will be built. The question is under what term, by whom, and for whose benefit. The second point is to invest in African talent, data, and innovation ecosystem. Support African researchers, universities, startups, national statistical offices, and languages community that are building the foundation of African AI LLM model. AI will not become inclusive by accident. It will become inclusive only and only if data, people, and institutions behind it are inclusive by design. Third and last, engage Africa as a co-author of a global digital and AI standard. That's important. Do not bring frameworks to Africa only after they have already been designed elsewhere. Work with the African AI Council, work with the African regulators, work with the African digital agencies, work with African innovators, because one conversation with the continental mechanism can create more scale, trust, and legitimacy than 50 fragmented bilateral conversation like we do usually. And Africa also brings something significant to the table: a market of 1.4 billion people, a world of youngest populations, fast-growing digital adoption, a continental coordination architecture, and a strategic partner in shaping global AI norms. The intelligence age will not be governed only from Brussels, Washington, D.C., or Beijing. Africa must be part of that table. And when Africa and Europe work together, we bring more than 2 billion people in the conversation. Aligned, we shape the norms. Divided, we follow them. Number 6, in closing, the future will not wait. Let me close where I began. 2 regions, 1 strategic questions. Africa is building its digital future. Europe is strengthening its technological autonomy. These are not parallel tracks. They are actually increasingly connected. The greatest risk for both our region is no longer only technological disruption. It is a strategic irrelevance through the delays. If we do not build trusted data corridors, shared governance framework, African computing capacity, digital public infrastructure, and the genuine co-investment models today, we will not have them when we need them most. So the digital future will not wait for us to finish our consultation. AI will not wait for us to harmonize our policies. Market will not wait for us to align our institution. That is why we must move with urgency. Africa is not waiting for permissions to be modern. Africa is not asking also an invitation for the future. Africa is building its own languages with its own talent, through its own institution, with the partners who understand that the next chapter must be written together. Europe and Africa have a choice here. We can remain 2 regions trying separately to manage dependency, or we can become 2 partners building digital sovereignty together. That is the road ahead, and I believe we should walk it together. Murakoze, merci, asante, dankeschön, thank you very much. So if you have any questions, I'm ready to take questions.
Hello. Thank you very much for this wonderful presentation. Despite the fragmentation in Africa that you mentioned, you were able to bring 42 member states. And my question to you is that, do you think that there is a political will to, for Africa to achieve its digital independence? Thank you.
Yeah, the question is, bringing 42 countries together, do I really think that there's a political will, right? My experience at Smart Africa since 2019, the political will is not the most important thing, but it's the lack of understanding the challenges. When you understand the challenges differently, you will take a different political will. If you believe that connecting school is your number 1 challenges, then you will pass the cabinet law on connected Ghana, connected Cameroon. But in reality, you might have some infrastructure that the only thing you really need to do is probably passing the law on the public services. We all talk about connectivity. I said to people, Africa's problem is not connectivity. You saw it here, 38% on average. The average in the world is 68%. But in Africa, we have 50%, something we call usage gap. It means there is an infrastructure, but people are not using it because of affordability, cost of the internet, cost of the devices, and the local contents, and the cyber hygiene. So you see, this is a different understanding of the challenges. So yes, the answer to your questions, the political will is there, but the political will alone is not enough. Understanding the challenges will be the biggest complementary.
Thank you. I want to ask you if what can be the risks? As you said, the AI cannot wait for our policies and governance frameworks and to have responsible AI and the ethics. And are those risks going to be recoverable, especially when we take into mind healthcare system, the ecosystem for healthcare? Do you have any clue, or there's a need to push for the governance and frameworks and responsible AI? Thank you.
Thank you. The question, what is the risk if we don't do it? The risk is a chaos. Do you know why? We are at the age of a digital revolution, which is the fourth industrial revolution. We cannot miss that turning. Let me tell you a little story very quickly. Between 1960 and 1980, between the third industrial revolution and the fourth industrial revolution, Africa's population in 1960 was 200 million. By 1980, we were 480. We gained 280 million. From 1980 to 2025, we jumped to 1.4 billion. We gained 1,050 million population. Has our number of schools increased that degree? No. As the hospital increases? No. So we have no choice. We want digital, we want financial services without banks. And we won that battle, mobile money. We are the leaders, 70%, generating 1.4 trillion US dollars in 2025, bigger than any bank in the world, outside the SWIFT system. Some people don't even know banks, so we won that battle. So we want healthcare services without hospital. The biggest AI use cases will be in Africa in AI. In Europe, you have 1,000 population per one doctor. In Africa, you have a 20,000 population per one doctor. How the AI can contribute in the healthcare. Triage in the village area, in the rural area, before you bring them to the hospital. It is already happening. It is not a rhetoric. So the risk of missing AI, I cannot even imagine it. Because I do believe that if Africa is has a vision to build the most useful AI, not the most powerful one. We don't need AI girlfriend or boyfriend in Africa. We need AI that solves real problem. And the real problem is in Africa. We will be leading in that. So I cannot even imagine if we miss the turn. Thank you. Any more questions? I think we have a question in the back there.
I think we need to have a private chat with each other. I'm sorry.
All right,
but I know
thank
the
you.
topic is so interesting. So thank you so much for being here and presenting.